Any stories shared in this podcast have had names and details changed for the confidentiality of clients. Any resemblance to someone real is coincidental. Today we are talking about one of the biggest mistakes you can make with your boundaries, which is not being firm with them and not actually holding them or following through with them. So we've broken that into a few different categories that we're going to talk a little bit about. And the first one being that it's not actually a boundary if you don't follow through, because it falls under a category of like behavior manipulation.
Yeah, one of the things that you end up finding is if you're consistently telling somebody that what they're doing is a boundary violation, but you never follow through with the consequence of what you are telling them, then there is no boundary. Then what ends up happening is it kind of becomes this empty threat, and you're trying to get other people to change when the reality is you have no control in that, and you're the one that needs to make the change. So there is no boundary. It's just an empty threat.
I think it makes you the really annoying friend in your group or person in your family or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that just illustrates the importance of why this is the biggest mistake, is not following through with what you say. Because then all you end up doing is threatening other people that if they don't change their behavior to fit what you want, then the friendship doesn't work out. And you don't really have any say in what other people do, right?
Right.
The second one I always think of is that if you're not holding a boundary, that's just going to make you feel kind of crappy. Because if I'm the one always saying, hey, I don't like it when XYZ happens, and the people around me keep doing XYZ, I'm like, oh my gosh, no one's listening to me, no one's respecting me. And I think sometimes we do that without realizing how much of that is kind of our own fault sometimes, because we don't ever be firm on the boundary. We don't ever follow through with, well, if XYZ happens, like I'm not going to come to family dinner if we're going to talk politics the whole time or whatever, that kind of thing. And so you end up personalizing that, even though a lot of it's more in your control than we like to acknowledge sometimes.
Yeah, you feel like you're not getting any respect from other people, but you're kind of not demonstrating self-respect either.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important for all of us to realize when we're not holding our boundaries is that we're actually teaching people to walk all over us even more.
To also not hold our boundaries?
Right. And actually, we're almost like conditioning them to do that more with us. Because if I say, hey, I'm not going to talk about this thing. When you bring it up, I'm going to change the subject or I'm going to leave the room for a few minutes because that's not my thing. But when somebody actually runs over that boundary, we just sort of sit and hem and haw for a little bit and we don't follow through. All we're doing is we're teaching the other person that we don't mean what we're saying. We don't mean that they have to respect our boundaries. We don't mean that we're going to actually do anything. And then the next time we go to hold our boundaries, everybody will see us as a pushover. So they'll try a little harder just to keep running over it because they think, well, she doesn't really like this, but it's not that big of a deal to her, right?
Yeah, and I feel like eventually it just becomes like you might say something and no one even gives it a second thought because they're like, oh, Cher says what Cher says and we'll just do whatever anyway.
Right. So I think the biggest lessons to learn here is that when you're setting a boundary, it's so important that you hold it. If you don't hold it, you're just trying to control other people's behavior instead of controlling your own. And the very best way that you can teach people to respect you and that you can have self-respect is by upholding what it is that you say you're going to do.
Yeah, follow through, or else you're going to end up, ultimately, I think what we've talked about is feeling worse and having other people not want to hold your boundary in the first place anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we will see you on the next video.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We've got other videos for you to check out and more exciting things coming soon, so thank you.